started with a dream. Communities came together like never before, building lifelong relationships few imagined could exist, creating the most powerful and diverse partnership the Valley has ever seen. The Greater Lehigh Valley Chamber of Commerce, on every Main Street.
Please welcome the manager for Mack Experience Center Operations and Brand Experience, Nicole Pulowski.
Good morning and welcome to the Mack Experience Center. As Frank mentioned, I'm Nicole Pulowski and I'm the manager of the Mack Experience Center Operations. The last time the Chamber was able to have their summit here was in 2019, and Mack is thrilled to welcome everyone back. Holding the Chamber's Transportation Summit at the Mack Experience Center makes sense as Mack has been providing a transportation solution from Allentown since 1905. Mack continues to move the world, and just in the first half of 2023, we have refreshed the look and driver visibility in our Mack Granite, assembled in Lehigh Valley operations in McKenzie, where all of our Mack Class 8 vehicles are produced for North America and export. We just built our 10,000th medium-duty truck at our Roanoke Valley operations in Virginia. We just announced Mack medium-duty electric production, which will be also in Roanoke. We also announced production of our compressed natural gas granite. We just recently entered a partnership with Heliox in Gilbarco to increase charging infrastructure. We expanded the number of electronic control units for over-the-air updates in 3 Mack models. And we've also achieved 30 electric vehicle certified dealers in our network, and we have a significant amount of other dealers in process. This is just a few examples of how Mack is driving the future and evolving with the transportation needs of our customers. In addition to the Mack Experience Center reopening to our customers, the Mack Trucks Historical Museum has reopened to the public. The museum is open today for self-guided tours at the conclusion of our summit, and please feel free to walk through there on your way out. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy your time at this year's Transportation Summit.
And now, please welcome the chair of the Chamber's Transportation Committee and Lehigh Valley Office Executive and Vice President for Michael Baker International, Ralph Eberhardt.
Thank you. Thank you. On behalf of the Chamber's Transportation Committee, welcome to the 2023 Lehigh Valley Transportation Forum. The members of the committee, our partners, my co-chair Heather Heater, and I are so thrilled to be able to present this fabulous event again in person. And even more excited to be back at Mack. How about this venue, huh? Beautiful. One of a kind. My name is Ralph Eberhardt, Office Executive and Vice President at Michael Baker International and Chair of the Transportation Committee. And before we go any farther, please join me in thanking our primary sponsor, a huge supporter of the committee and of this event, the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission. Where are they? Thank you for your leadership and taking us into the future. What are you going to hear about today? I actually don't know exactly what you're going to hear about, but I have a sneaking suspicion that you may hear about some options to supplement or replace the gas tax that may or may not include an annual fee on electric vehicles. You may, I don't know, but you may get an update on the beautiful new terminal connector at the Lehigh Valley International Airport, soon to open. and you may hear about the future of what Lehigh Valley public transportation might look like. So what I do know is who our presenters are. And if there was ever a Mount Rushmore of Lehigh Valley transportation, this is it. Becky Bradley from the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission. We have Tom Stout, Executive Director of the Airport Authority. Owen O'Neill, where are you? Executive Director of Atlanta is here. And Deputy Secretary of Highway Administration for PennDOT, Mike Reber, is here. So again, thank you for being here. We hope you enjoy the show. Thank you.
And now please welcome the Chamber's Vice President of Government and External Affairs, Mr. Mack.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being here this morning. We put a lot of work into this event this morning for you, so hopefully you enjoy it. We've got 4 great speakers. Interesting fact, Mack Trucks actually holds a pretty special place in the heart of the chamber. It's where our president and CEO got his start after high school. He worked for Mack for 3 years putting tires on trucks. So that's a very interesting fact that I wanted to share with everybody. So before we get started, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to some of the elected officials that came here this morning. So first, our elected officials worked tirelessly to make sure that the transportation funding that's coming in Lehigh Valley is spent efficiently. So we were very thankful for all that they do. So first, he was here for a little bit. He stopped by, a very busy guy, the youngest senator in Pennsylvania history in the past 123 years, Senator Nick Miller. He was here. I want to thank him. A guy I know that if they somehow decide to implement a mileage-based user fee on bicycles, there'll be an uproar. Mayor Matt Turk. And then I just wanted to say a quick shout out to a few of our Chamber Executive Committee members that are here this morning. Paul Anthony, thank you so much for being here. And then Murtaza Jaffer from EBC Printing. So again, thank you all for being here. And we hope you enjoy the program that we put together.
And now please welcome the Chamber's Senior Vice President for Member Relations and Operations, Allison Pickle.
On Jock Jams Volume 3, if anyone remembers the Jock Jams. I know I do. I had all of them. But thank you again to Matt, to Ralph, the entire Transportation Committee of the Greater Lehigh Valley Chamber. We have a really excellent program planned for you today. And again, thanks to all of our committees of public policy. The information is so important to our chamber and to our members. So excited for today. I have the fun job of moving it when I say thank you to all of our sponsors and supporters. I know it's been said, but thank you so much to Becky and our friends at the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission for being great supporters and friends of the chamber. So thank you, Becky and team. We're all about clapping here. Our platinum sponsor, thank you so much, Tom, Lehigh Valley International Airport. I just told him he had a really cool walk-up song, and he says, "What is it?" I'm like, "I don't know, but it's really cool." So it'll be cool. Thanks, Tom. And our gold sponsor, thank you so much to Owen and Lanta team. Thank you for being our gold supporters. Yep, good cheer. Yep. And of course, our corporate sponsor, Capital Blue Cross, is everywhere. Chrissy and team, thank you, Capital Blue. And our silver sponsors, we have Adams Outdoor Advertising, Keystone Consulting Engineers, Langen Engineering and Environmental Services, Michael Baker International, Prologis, and Pursuit. Thank you so much for our silver sponsors. And our bronze sponsor, our friends at the Traffic Planning and Design, thank you so much. And of course, our host sponsor, thank you to Mack Trucks, the Experience Center. I think you have the shiniest floors in the Lehigh Valley, Nicole. So, no, this space is really beautiful, and thank you again for being our host. And of course, our print sponsor, again, Murtaza, who is everywhere supporting us. He attends more events than the chamber staff combined. But thank you, Murtaza, for being everywhere and always supporting the chamber. Let's give it up for all of our sponsors and supporters again. Enjoy the program.
And now please welcome the Executive Director of the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission, Becky Bradley.
Hello. So, welcome to the Lehigh Valley's Transportation something that's pretty serious, and that's the future of transportation. So where are we right now? I think we're all aware that the value of the Lehigh Valley's economy is larger than that of the state of Alaska or the state of New Hampshire, and that we now, whether we want to be or not, have the largest new freight facility development in the United States of America. And our freight profile has been growing steadily over the last 6 years, and you'll see some data on that in a minute. But that is supported by over a 290-year-old freight economy, including investors in our region like Mack Trucks, Crayola, Air Products, and many, many other manufacturers. And they're supported then by a supply and distribution network that's now augmented by the e-commerce industry. Simultaneously, we've seen decades worth of population growth, and we intend to see additional growth, about 4,000 persons per year. But change is occurring, and it's inevitable. And the one thing I think we need to stop and just take a pause on is the fact that we've been in a tremendous period of change in the region for over really 60 years at this point. It's accelerating, however, and we see that with the changes in land uses, we see that in the changes in the traffic patterns, and we definitely see that in terms of our employment profile. And really what this slide shows is it projects our increase in employment out to 2055. And we use this information along with those population projections that I just showed you to predict the impact on our infrastructure network, so the Lehigh Valley Transportation Study can then help to identify needed projects and then invest in those to keep our transportation system full. But what this slide really shows you is that the manufacturing economy and the transportation industry actually total over 96,000 jobs. Combined, it's our largest industry behind healthcare. And we expect that to continue to grow over the next decades. So I mentioned a little bit about what's been changing, and why I'm so focused on the industrial economy is the fact that that has one of our most significant impacts on the infrastructure system. Whether it's bridges, whether it's congestion on local roads, whether it's normal or growing traffic on our interstate highway system, we have to account for those things as we not only recognize what's happening right now, but plan for those investments into the future. And really what this slide shows that over the last 6 years, with what our local governments have approved, which is in the bar chart, in addition to what's been proposed through just the end of 2022, we could conceivably have at least another 44 million square feet of new industrial product hit the market. Because of our growth over less than a decade, although remember, it's a traditional pattern of industrial investment in the Lehigh Valley, but because of this new peak in growth, we really have to look at the infrastructure system differently. So that requires us to find solutions to not only our regional challenges, but then how does that tie in with the infrastructure funding? I think it's something else that's important, because a lot of people tell us, oh, these warehouses are vacant. Well, first of all, big general boxes, they house all kinds of uses, and I think that's important. And the freight profile from one building to the next can be vastly different. And so can the employee profile. So that's passenger vehicles or transit, which you'll hear about from Owen in a little bit. And that also ties back to our airport infrastructure, which you'll also hear about from Tom, and then obviously Mike Reber from PennDOT as it relates to the state's perspective. But we have to tie all of that together. So we do that through partnerships, where the Planning Commission is obviously charged with helping our local governments, but where we're the strongest is in working with local governments to plan for this. Liquid fuel funding is declining because the efficiency of our vehicles is increasing. The efficiency of our freight vehicles is increasing as well, which means less gas tax revenue. So So Ralph had alluded to the fact that we have to have new transportation funding solutions, and certainly that is the case. But what can we do right now as we also advocate for different funding formulas and different ways to backfill those loss of gas tax revenues that we're going to see simultaneously with these pressures from growth? And really what we can do is we can partner. First of all, we can understand what the changes are to our infrastructure system. So we've partnered up with basically our adjacent metropolitan planning organizations. So everybody from Lackawanna, Luzerne, all the way out to Lebanon County. We call it the Eastern PAC. So the I-80 corridor to 81 and back over to 78 to the New Jersey border. And as a result of that, we've been working with PennDOT and then our consultant WSP to develop a freight profile, which will then turn into a freight infrastructure and investment strategy. Because freight is inherently multi-regional. It may even be global, as we all know. So how can we work within the context of Eastern Pennsylvania to understand the new traffic patterns that we're seeing? So we're well on the way with some of that work, and as that slide indicated, routes like 22, no shocker to anyone, are some of our greatest bottlenecks. In fact, Route 22 takes more vehicles than any other road in the Lehigh Valley, followed by State Route 33, then I-78. So I-78 serves the purpose of moving vehicles through the Lehigh Valley by and large, but local and regional traffic, as well as traffic from other states, are utilizing 33 and 22 as well. So how do we work within the context of that, along with the Turnpike and others, to make sure our infrastructure system stays well maintained? Obviously, people want to know about what's happening with the passenger rail conversation as it relates to connections between the Lehigh Valley and adjacent metros. The Pennsylvania Department of Transportation was kind enough to agree to pay for over $300,000, by the way, and work with the LVTS and hire a consultant to look at what the feasibility of that could be. It's not a guarantee. It's step one in the federal process to see if we can actually support it and then potentially develop a pathway for implementation of that. So the routes that they're looking at are the connection to Newark, then down to Philadelphia, and then we're aware of the study in Reading, so the potential connection there. They'll be looking at very realistic things, like what sort of infrastructure exists now for the passenger system, what routes may be viable, what is the feasibility of those routes, and then what sort of improvements would need to occur to see if we can even qualify to get in line for this at the federal level. So this basically is the road to rail. It's the path, the federal path that you have to follow to see if you're eligible. We are at part one, feasibility and alternatives identification. And then over the next 6 months to 9 months, PennDOT with the consultant coming back to the LVTS to tell us what they found. So operations and maintenance costs, what right-of-way is possible to do some of the things that people have talked about. So more on that. I think one of the things that I'm very excited about right now, and it's far from esoteric, though it can easily be compartmentalized into that, is some of the climate action initiatives that are happening. And a really interesting and fun thing happened. We started working with the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection because our three cities have done an amazing job at climate action planning. But some of our rural communities, some of even our suburban townships and boroughs say, hey, we don't have the staff and the capacity to do some of that work. Planning Commission, that's where you come in, you're a partner with us, with all 62 local governments. Can you help us with our climate action work? And we said absolutely. Worked with Pennsylvania DEP to do a first greenhouse gas inventory, which we released at the end of last year, beginning of this year. And then that's grown into how do we work with FEMA and PEMA in terms of protecting our infrastructure as we see more frequent rain events that are more intense, maybe not exactly in this moment. And then that ties into other things like a permanent air quality monitoring system that with the recent U.S. Department of Environmental Protection Agency funding that we will be receiving is going to allow us to really chart a path to sequester carbon. Again, it sounds nerdy, but what we saw last week with the wildfire smoke that came all the way down into the eastern United States from Canada, outside of those major events, we have our own air quality issues here. And in combination, we need healthy air, healthy water, and how do we tie that together? And so we're going to be embarking on a series of initiatives, many of them tied to transportation. It includes things like we're working on a partnership with PPL, for example, to look at our EV infrastructure in the Lehigh Valley. And one of the things that I'm the most excited about is how do we capture the existing right-of-way that's already owned by the public to green it? Can we plant that up? Can we utilize that to reduce runoff and reduce flooding and damage to our existing infrastructure, like our bridge infrastructure? Can we use that to really identify the Lehigh Valley as the green place that survey after quality of life survey that the Planning Commission has done? People have said economy and the jobs and our natural environment are the most important factors, and they're equal in terms of how we want to see our community, how we see it now, and what we want it to be in the future. So we're on the cusp of being able to bring together a lot of things that will allow us to do that in partnership with folks like Lanta, who are doing a tremendous amount on the transit front. So the Lehigh Valley Transportation Study, which receives those federal dollars, 80% by and large of money is federal, and then another 20% comes from the state legislature as a match. So folks like Senator Miller are key to making sure that we can unlock and access those federal dollars, and then our federal representation through Congressman Wild and through Senator Casey and the like are critical for us to having the budget that you see on the slide in front of you. The Lehigh Valley Transportation Study is in the process of updating the long-range transportation plan. And for those of you that don't know, they're our sister board, and everyone just calls us the LVPC, but we're really made up of the Bi-County Planning Commission, LVPC, and LVTS. And so between the current 2019 budget, which was $2.48 million, we've been able to increase that budget through the hard work of Congress at the federal level to over $4.3 billion. And over the next months, the LVTS is going to decide where those future investments are going to go. As part of that, we did over 24 meetings with local governments and the public back in April, and I wanted to give a sincere thank you to Hannah Malagio, who's here, who pulled off, yes, 24 meetings in 30 days, actually 27 days, I think it was. Nothing, no small feat. Did a transportation survey, and here's what we found out. What we found out, and we had a really good rate of response, so it is a statistically valid survey, which in margin of error 3%, over 1,000 people responded. By and large, it was members of the public, but you can see who responded there. And what we found out is that people are prioritizing congestion and traffic flow, followed by the condition of our infrastructure as their highest priority, and then our bridge infrastructure. So people really are looking at maintaining the system and improving it to make it safer and to make it more resilient. But interestingly enough, walking, transit came up higher than they ever had in previous iterations. And from that, we were able to really window in with folks and say, okay, well, where then would you like us to invest that $4.3 billion? And they said safety first. What's great about that is that aligns with the congressional priorities for the allocation of funds that make up that $4.3 billion, followed by roadway operations. Again, that aligns with those federal priorities. And then again, very different than any other survey that we had done in the past. Then we saw things like transportation accessibility. What does that actually mean? That means walking infrastructure, cycling infrastructure, transit infrastructure, things that make our communities age-friendly no matter where you are in your life cycle. And last, we asked people, if you had $100, exactly where would you spend that in the region? And they were very clear about that. And this was also very different than we've seen in previous surveys. Again, as we can expect with the previous survey responses, because you test them throughout this, did you really mean what you said you meant in the previous questions? $35 they would spend on road and bridge infrastructure. So that aligns with what they said in the previous question. Then they said $23 on infrastructure resilience. So people are recognizing the need for the protection of the infrastructure in the face of the climate situation that we find ourselves in today. So increasing resiliency becomes very important, and that's cheaper for the taxpayer to make things more resilient than to wait for something like a bridge collapse to occur to then address the problem. And then something that we hadn't seen in the past was, again, the increase in public desire for walking and rolling accessibility, so biking, transit, and cycling infrastructure, as well as ADA accessibility. And so 23 plus 18, you see that really prioritizes that multimodal climate and that multimodal investment up there with maintenance of things for other types of vehicles. So that reinforces a lot of the policy that's already in Future LV, the regional plan. And so those new monies that LVTS is going to be working through how they're going to allocate over the next month. From a policy perspective, we have general alignment, even with the new federal infrastructure law, as well as the adopted plan from 2019. And now they just have to figure out how they're going to invest those additional resources in these newer public priorities, which are inherently more multimodal. We've already started working on some of that, as you know, and you guys have probably heard me talk about the Riverside Drive project more than you care to, but we were able to put together a $32 million match with the help of ANISDA in Allentown and the waterfront partners, Market and Zach Jandal, that allowed us to acquire a $21.158 million raised grant to build a new connector, a road, a multimodal connector. So also not just good for cars, but also for bikes and pedestrians. It closes the gap in the DNL Heritage corridor, roughly from Fullerton Avenue at 22 down to downtown Allentown. And then a trail only is what we can afford north of Fullerton, really up to Ray Street as part of this. What I wanted to tell you today is that construction schedule is set to start, and that road facility would be open sometime, or the total project would be finished sometime between 2027 and 2029, depending on materials, costs, and other things, and the flexibility that we have to have in the supply chain today. So I'll end with this. None of this is possible without not only the people in this room, but our elected officials, federal, state, local, our public and our private sector. And so all of your support is absolutely critical as we enter into this new era in the middle of the fourth industrial revolution and preparing our infrastructure not only for today, but for tomorrow. And so we're just on the cusp of figuring out the next. And I just wanted to say thank you for all the support that you've given the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission and LVTS over the years, and I look forward to continuing to partner with you as we navigate the new normal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mack. And now please welcome the Executive Director of the Lehigh Northampton Airport Authority, Tom Stout.
Well, hey, good, let's see, we check time here. Good afternoon.
Great to be with you, and certainly this transportation forum. I'm certainly not sure how I'm going to follow this with Becky and Rick, but I'm going to do my best. So we're going to start off with a little update about the airport system. Just out of curiosity, how many people have flown since 2020? How many people have flown since 2020? How many in the last year? Okay, good show of hands here. So let's talk a little bit about the airport system and kind of what's on the horizon here. I'm not sure if I can work the nuclear device, but let's give it a shot. So a little bit about the airport. We're the 4th largest commercial service airport in the Commonwealth. One of the things that people are always surprised to hear is that there's about $500 million, a little over, of economic input into the region. This is significant not just in terms of what's happening at the airport, but even off the campus, and this is system-wide for us. Nearly 5,000 related jobs to the airport, so a pretty significant amount of activity centered around air transportation. I know we talk a lot about stuff with wheels and brake lights. We're a little different, but let's keep rolling through the investment that's really needed here. We're talking about 5 years. This is investment into our facilities, $230 million needed. It's always a challenge. Where does this money come from? We'll talk a little bit about that. And then also, right across the street is Queen City Airport. Most folks may drive past and never realize it's there. Queen City is a big part of the aviation system for us, as well as Brayton Air Park over in Northampton County. And so let's take a dive into pre-pandemic. Where's the traffic been in terms of our passenger traffic? Well, you can see we were just about at 1 million passengers in 2019. Significant passenger traffic level for our airport, especially when we consider that Philadelphia International and Newark International are so close. Look what the pandemic did to us in 2020. In the footnote, might be an eye test. The last time we were at that traffic level was 1972. So you get a sense of what happened to passenger traffic and how we really needed to respond as an organization for that. But again, one of the things I think that was important for us, I have to thank our board. We have Paul and Frank here. I think our team was really the strategic approach we took to the pandemic to reduce expenses, but make really strategic investments as well. So that, again, coming out of this, you can see last year passenger traffic right back, exceeding 2019 passenger traffic levels. And that's a lot of the hands that were in the air that I just saw a few moments ago. This one might really be an eye test, but here we go again with comparing ourselves in the region to airports similar to ABE. So in terms of their activity levels and level of service from air carriers, how did we fare? And when we look at the TSA throughput, how many people are going through the checkpoint at ABE versus also the scheduled seats in the market, you can see that blue dot. Really only one airport here, Westchester County, service from Breeze Airways, a new service entrant there, lifted their seats. But certainly, compared to our peers in Harrisburg, a short distance away, or Wilkes-Barre, you can see really how quickly ABE has recovered. We did get an Allegiant crew base. Was announced just before the pandemic, February of 2020, about a month before. So we're really starting to see what that crew base means. But we know that we have some investment. We talked a little bit about that $230 million investment we have to make over the next 5 years. So for those of you that have been through the facility, you'll recognize the picture on the upper left. That's our TSA checkpoint. That's our connector through what I like to refer to affectionately as the dark, scary tunnel. And you can see on the right is where we're headed. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. In the red circle is the new connection, the above-ground connection between our main terminal and our satellite concourse. So taking a look here, this is a shot just from this week. So really starting to look like a lot of the renderings and images we saw early on. $35 million investment is not insignificant. About 90% of the project is complete. Again, capacity for additional screening lanes. We have 2 screening lanes today, and we can process about 300 persons per hour through that checkpoint. This will allow us to double that. So if you you've been through ABE and you've had to wait in the security line, we're hoping to make that experience a lot different. This one I want to thank a lot of the federal and state elected officials here. $19 million in grant funding. I also want to thank our board. When we started this project, a little bit of a leap of faith, we had $3.5 million of grant funding for this $35 million project during a pandemic. We started this project with that in hand and marched diligently forward to collect additional funding, and we were able to do that with the support of our elected officials here. Nearly $19 million in hand now, this project. State-of-the-art air purification life air system in this space, also going to be a gold facility, so we're really proud of that sustainability component to the project as well. Just for the engineers in the room, we want to talk a little bit about a couple of the features here. 219 micropiles, again, karst geology, so a lot of sinkhole-prone geology in the region. So we wanted to make sure this structure stood for a very long time. It's 450 tons of steel, and this is again local steel. When we look at the excavation needed, 21 feet deep, people thought we were putting in a nice in-ground pool at the time, but really this is the new connection for returning passengers to get back downstairs in the tunnel. So the big feature of the new space will be separating the flow of our outbound passengers and our inbound passengers. And all the concrete in that inside that new connection was poured in a single day. It was almost 24 hours of pouring, but it was a pretty impressive process to get that all in. When we look at air service, and one of the things that we just talked about a little bit is all of the ground transportation, and even the airlines in this climate. When we look at what really is happening in the environment for the carriers in terms of pilot shortages and aircraft challenges, enough aircraft in the system, they're looking at options. This has really been a significant one for us. Landline is a partner server, and they're providing service through American to Philadelphia International and with United to Newark International. And it's really been received with great response. The community really has said a lot of great things. And for many of you who's never actually taken the bus to Newark, got some hands here. Well, this is a little different. So the 19-seat bus is gone, 35-seat motor coach now, leather seating, Wi-Fi, charging station. People said sometimes they're saying, hey, this is almost more comfortable than the aircraft. So we're really hearing a lot of good compliments about the service when we're dealing with these challenges in the airline industry in terms of service right now. Having these linkages to the major hubs is significant, and having this connection has really been important. Starting tomorrow, not to be outdone by our buses, we have a Legionnaire stepping up here, and again, I mentioned we had this new base that came online just before the pandemic. We're starting to see the fruits of that here. Tomorrow, Denver service starts. We actually set a record with the Legion. They called us, they couldn't believe the number of reservations that were coming in to the reservation system for this one. It actually set a record for them. We're up to over 7,000 reservations tested this morning. So continuing to see great results on this. Hope folks can take advantage of that. In terms of what else is on the map, we're going to take Denver off. We've been able to connect there. But Boston continues to be an important one. We're continuing to look at that. Dallas, another connection west, and you can see a few of those as we start to look west. We have some pretty good connections on the East Coast. So Las Vegas, everybody wants to get to Orlando International. We have good connections to Sanford, Orlando, but Orlando International remains on that list, as well as San Juan. And I know we've talked a lot about connectivity there and looking at some alternatives for different carriers. Just real quick, so I kind of alluded to this already. There is a challenge with the number of workers in the aviation sector. And aircraft availability and pilot shortage, you can see the issues are restrained in the system. We don't have the flight crews. And when we talk to our airline partners, we're starting to see that the major airlines are getting back to full staff. Some, like United, have created their own flight academies and bringing people into the system. And so we're getting those pilots back into the system. But the regional carriers are seeing that draw. So a lot of our regional affiliate carriers are losing pilots into the majors, and so we still have some makeup to do. When we look at load factors are back, but what that really is about how many people are on the aircraft. And with fewer aircraft available, fewer pilots available, aircraft are fuller. Has anybody noticed that? How full airplanes are when they're flying? So this is a trend that's going to continue. We've seen the airlines now take a shift this summer and pull down capacity. There's more demand that they can reasonably accommodate. You may have read a little bit about the administration in Washington talking to the carriers about making sure we don't have a repeat of what happened last summer, where a lot of folks were stranded in the air transportation system. So preemptively, carriers have pulled down schedules to make sure that they can meet the demand. I expect we're going to see that at ADE this summer. Maybe not the same record numbers we had last summer as capacity is being pulled down over what demand is. We talked about passengers. Let's talk about cargo. This is something, when you look at, like a 2014 where we had about 25 million pounds of cargo moving through the facility versus today, we're on track to get close to that 250 million mark. You're talking about a 900% increase in cargo growth over time, and I think that's something that's pretty significant. We're on pace to 30% up this year. And Becky mentioned it, e-commerce is a big driver of what's happening. A lot of people, you can see when the pandemic started, I think on the graph, 2020, and how each year since then we've seen that continued growth in air cargo. So we're working on looking at how air cargo needs to be accommodated. Our master plan study talked a lot about that and looking at alternatives on airport at ADE and where we can continue to provide facilities to service the cargo demand that's here. Mentioned the master plan. One of the other things we're taking a look at is non-aeronautical revenues. You can imagine during a pandemic, not a lot of people flying, we lost a lot of activity and a lot of revenue on the aeronautical side. So looking at some opportunities here, and this is something again our master plan pointed out, along sort of that beachfront property for us, which is right along Airport Road, an opportunity for a hotel. You may have read about that recently. Marriott Courtyard has an interest there, so working with them to see what we can do on development. But it also lays out a new entrance for the airport in the future and another set of opportunities for commercial development along that frontage. Again, important revenue as we continue to be self-sustaining, not using tax dollars to really continue to develop the airport. Queen City, I guess the header on these slides is you need special glasses. I don't know if anybody can read these, maybe I'm the only one. So this is a Queen City Airport, $2.29 million infrastructure investment here on our crosswind runway. Again, federally obligated airport, so we did get some FAA grant funds here, but again, local share and state match as well. Multiple phases of work taking place. This runway recently had some restrictions lifted, but we did some obstruction removal. It took us a few years to get some funding in place for that, to keep night approaches open, so we're happy to have this runway back open at night and available, and now we're working to get the pavement, the lighting, again, all LED lighting, LED signage, so again, thinking about energy efficiency as we're looking at making some upgrades locally across the street. And Braden Airport. Braden Airport, we have a new terminal. So this was a significant project. We had really a different sort of terminal. It was a combination facility that really didn't serve the community well over in Northampton County. What's great about the facility now is we have a great space for pilots, whether they're based or transient pilots flying into the airport, to be able to come in, meet. Basically also have community groups that can use the meeting space. It really is a great asset to the community. Again, a matching grant from PennDOT on this one. And I think, again, a great investment in the air park as we continue to invest in this aviation system that connects us to the national airspace system. So last but not least, I would be remiss if we didn't talk about the Real ID program. And again, this date has been a moving target. I'm no longer accepting bets if this is going to move again, but for right now, keep in mind in 2025, we're going to need need to have a Real ID compliant document to fly domestically. So to get on that bus to Newark or that bus to Philadelphia on American or United, you're going to need a Real ID compliant document. So that could be your passport if you have to carry that with you a lot. Your passport card will certainly be able to do that with a Real ID compliant state driver's license or identification card. So the gold star. So with that, I'm going to close out and be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Raise your hand if you have a question or comment for Tom. All right, thank you very much, Tom.
All right, thank you.
All right, now please welcome the Executive Director of LANTA, the Lehigh and Northampton Transportation Authority, Owen O'Neill.
I just wanted to kind of give kind of an update of where we are coming out of COVID and kind of the environment that we're operating in and what our plans are to try to kind of address what we're seeing here in the Valley. Just some overview type stuff. The two biggest pieces of our operation are first is what we call the Atlanta Bus Division. That's the fixed route big buses, like you see. Annually, pre-COVID, we carried about 4.5 million people every year on that system. We're back to about 90% of that, and the trend is heading in the right direction. It's heading up. We're up about 30 to 40% higher than we were last year. So we are taking a lot of actions to try to keep that trend going upward, and then we're hoping is that we'll actually not only reach pre-COVID levels, but continue to grow beyond that. On any given day, 50 to 55% of those people on the Atlanta bus are going back and forth to work. Another 10 to 15 are going back and forth to school. And Atlanta as a whole, we're an organization of about 200 people. Our drivers and our maintenance employees are represented by the Amalgamated Transit Union. We also have what we call our Atlanta van, which is our paratransit system for target populations, for seniors and persons with disabilities. Pre-COVID, that was about 400 to 450,000 rides a year. We're back to about 50 to 60% of that now. Paratransit is recovering a little bit slower. A lot of the things that are some of the program sites that we haven't come back to full operations. So there's various things that are kind of leading the growth to return to pre-COVID levels. Kind of what makes transit, trying to plan for transit here at the Lehigh Valley unique, type of things that Becky just talked about, rapid population growth. Some of the figures, the population figures that Becky presented earlier are a little more updated and things, but basically we're seeing 4,000 to 6,000 new people a year, 100,000 new residents by 2030. So we're seeing significant continued population growth. We're also seeing rapid job growth. The Workforce Investment Board projects about 356,000 jobs in the region by 2020. Those are healthcare, manufacturing, retail, warehousing, logistics. Big thing from a transportation standpoint about those growth, the things that we're seeing growth in, those are jobs that can't be done remotely. They're generally not done in the central business district. They're done in suburban office parks around the region, and they don't typically have traditional work schedules. They're kind of all over the place. They're shifts starting at Sunday morning at 2 a.m., ending Saturday night at 11 p.m. Those kind of things that make transportation, planning for the transportation of those needs a little bit more complex. The other thing we have, obviously, in the region is nationally renowned hospital chains that are building something on every corner, it seems like. Their business model currently, right, is decentralization, trying to get closer and closer and more facilities out by the population and their customers. And that really makes it harder for us, obviously, because the more places you have to go to, the more places you have to bring people to. And one of the things about medical facilities is people think, oh, people take the bus to get to their doctor's appointment. It's actually more people who take buses to medical facilities are actually people work there. The people who work in food services, housekeeping, that also have very strange hours and non-traditional hours. So we're always kind of trying to keep up with that. Also in our region, when we talk about the economy, one of the biggest of the cornerstones of the regional economy going forward, that people like to look to is tourism, ecotourism. And so those are things that trying to connect those various, not only the people who work in those industries, but the people who come into the region and then want to visit those places. So what does that mean for us when we try to plan for all those things? It's more people, continuously more people, going to more places, more times, more days of the week, which makes planning for transit more and more complex every year. So one of the things that when you kind of look at where we are, these are statistics from all transit agencies in the country have to every year report to what's called the Federal Transit Administration's National Transit, and we report as a metro area. And when you look at the metro areas that report to this database, Allentown Bethlehem East metro area is ranked number 60 in terms of the overall population. And if you look at kind of two peer metro areas, kind of the Springfield, Holyoke, Northampton, Massachusetts, Albany, Schenectady, Troy, New York, those are kind of both northeastern and three-city regions, similar population, similar climate. So they're good peers for us. But when you look at the ranks in terms of the metro areas by transit service hours per capita, which is kind of a good measure, just kind of the overall availability of transit in that metro area. You see Albany is 36, Springfield is 95, Allentown, Bethlehem East, we're ranked 160, even though we were number 60 for population. And then again, that translates to the graph on the right there, where it's metro areas by transit trips per capita, which is kind of basically a measure of kind of the overall utilization of transit by population. Again, Albany is 38, Springfield 71, Allentown, Bethlehem East is number 162. So even though we're number 60 in population, we're way down in terms of the amount of service that's available to people, and then conversely, it's not very available, people don't tend to use it. And so the overall utilization is low. And that really has kind of the overall, having a kind of a lower level of transit service available to people, really should be there. Really does have some quality of life and economic impacts in the region. The equity analysis prepared by LVPC showed that 66,000 Lehigh Valley residents are living in areas that were rated as low or very low access to opportunity. The LVPC estimated that if we miss out on a logistics or a manufacturing facility that has 100 employees, either they don't come, they don't stay, or they don't expand. That's a $21 million hit to the regional economy. Also, the regional hospitals report that there's about an 8% medical appointment no-show in the region. Every no-show doesn't mean someone doesn't show up, they have an appointment, they didn't show up. Every time that happens, that's a cost to those medical providers, which obviously everyone ends up paying for because the cost of medical care goes up. And then also, one of the things about the differential in unemployment rate between persons with disabilities and persons with not have disabilities is over 100%. Means that the unemployment rate of people with disabilities is over twice that among the general population. And that's not something that's unique to Valley, that's pretty common. But it does exist. And one of the most common reasons why is the lack of transportation that people have to be able to get to a job, especially people who have disabilities. So in terms of where we are now, in terms of our financial outlook, in terms of trying to use the resources we have to address all of those various trends that we're seeing, the current operating funding that we receive, which our primary source of operating funding comes from the state, comes from Commonwealth, and that really does not allow for growth in the system. And I never want to. I always feel like I'm walking around crying poor, asking for money, but I do want to point out Pennsylvania has a very good transportation fund, much better than most states. But the one thing that that really kind of limits us is it doesn't address very well areas that are experiencing growth. It allows you to kind of to establish a good level of service, and maintain that service, and when you're seeing really rapid growth economically and population, the tools we have in place now just don't really give us the options to address that. So we've been, despite that, we've been trying to stretch our resources thinner, try to go to all these new warehouses, these hospitals, do other types of commercial developments, and really try to stretch those resources thinner and thinner. And over the last couple of years, COVID relief dollars have really allowed us to kind of keep those things in place and keep those things going. But those COVID relief dollars are one-time allocations, so they go away. So after that, looking down the road, the next couple of fiscal years, we do really hit a point where we don't have enough resources to keep the current levels of service that we're operating now. Certainly not enough to continue to grow the system in the way we really should be. And really, if we did have kind of enhanced funding levels or new funding levels to allow us to grow the system, our most important priority would be to increase frequency of service. That means how often the bus comes. And our system does a pretty good job of going where we should go, but we just don't go often enough. So really, everywhere when we go places every 2 hours, we should be going every hour. If we go every hour, we should go every 30 minutes. And there's places where we really should be going every 10 minutes or even less, where there's the population densities and there's demand to have some really high frequency services. And so if we can expand the frequency of services, we can address a lot of these issues that we're seeing in our region. One of the biggest pieces of that in terms of trying to develop kind of higher frequency corridors and higher frequency services is our bus rapid transit, our enhanced bus service, which is the bus rapid transit type project. And what BRT, bus rapid transit is it's kind of creating a fast frequent transit corridors where there's higher demand, higher frequencies, and where it also allows people to cut down travel times on key corridors in your service area. And what it does is it takes kind of elements of a light rail system, but then with the cost efficiencies of a bus system, the flexibility of a bus system. So it has certain types of elements like high frequency and kind of express or limited stop type alignments where we're not stopping every block, but we're only stopping at key stops along the way, kind of like a light rail system. You don't have a station every other block, you have a station every quarter mile, every half mile kind of thing. It also has, looking at kind of an enhanced station, not just the bus stop with the bus stop sign, but where every stop that the bus service stops at is some type of a really recognized shelter, kind of a larger shelter, signage, electronic signage, something that really identifies it as a key transit stop. Also incorporates some roadway improvements like Q-jump lanes at intersections that allow the bus to kind of jump around lines of traffic or traffic signal prioritization that can sense if the bus is coming. It can hold the green longer to allow the bus to get through there. And basically just kind of things that can be done to the roadway. Also bus bump outs to allow the bus to pull up and make a stop without having to pull out of traffic. Those are kind of things that can kind of shave minutes along the way. And the more time you can shave along the way, as you go from end to end, you're saving 5, 6, 7 minutes. It doesn't sound like a whole lot, but it actually does really improve someone's convenience of a trip. So our current plan for that, we actually have this system in place right now. We have these routes in place. It's for the enhanced bus service. We have a true route system, basically kind of, and if we were to build a light rail system in Lehigh Valley, this is what it would look like. Kind of an east-west corridor, and then all the way from downtown Easton, all the way out to Trexlertown, and then a second route from Whitehall, serving the 145 corridor, coming down into Allentown, and then heading over to Bethlehem with a shared segment there between Allentown and Bethlehem. Right now, both of those routes run every 30 minutes, and so in that shared segment between Allentown and South Bethlehem, there's a bus every 15 minutes. So our plan with this would be to continue to if we have the resources, to continue to layer on top of that and cut those down to every 15 minutes, every 10 minutes, every 8 minutes, even on that shared segment. and then start to work on some of those physical improvements like we talked about along the way, those station improvements and those roadway improvements that continue to shave running time. And one of the things that I just wanted to end, when I always try to say like, these things that I just presented, it's not Atlanta's plan for what Atlanta wants to do. It's really kind of when you look at the future LV, we as a region came up with what's our vision for our region? What do we want the region to look like? As Becky talked about, we want to continue economic growth, give people economic opportunity, but we want to protect our natural resources and protect what is really pretty about the Lehigh Valley. And to do that, you really need a very robust transit system. That's a key element to that. And so when we present kind of our ideas, our thoughts, it's not like, hey, this is what Atlanta thinks should happen. Is that we've already as a region decided what we want our region to look like. And so if that's what we want the region to look like, this is what the transit system is going to look like. And so so that's kind of to finish up on that. You know, like I said, it's not really kind of Atlanta's vision, it's really more our vision, and we're kind of the transit professionals and say, okay, this is what you want to happen. This is what the transit system really should look like. And so that's kind of what we're building towards, and really kind of advocating for the resources to be able to do that. So I think I'll finish there, and open up for any comments or questions.
Thank you very much, Owen. Any questions or comments for Owen O'Neill? Thank you. For our final presentation this afternoon, please welcome the newly confirmed Deputy Secretary for Highway Administration for the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation, Mike Reber.
Ryan, well, thank you very much. Beautiful day to be here in the Lehigh Valley. I'd rather make the commute here than the commute to Harrisburg. So it's good to be here today. I want to touch on a few things. One is the program for Engineering District 5. So I was the district engineer for District 5 for the better part of 15 years. And I guess about 3 months ago, I was asked by Secretary of Transportation, Mike Carroll, to take the trip out to Harrisburg and be the Deputy Secretary. So now I'm oversee all the engineering districts throughout the state. So I see things at a much higher level, obviously, but the concerns and problems are primarily the same across the state. I want to touch a little bit on electric vehicles real quick. Funding, of course, is a huge issue all the time. And I will also touch on the accident that cost the truck driver his life and over the weekend, and also caused the collapse on I-95. So just to touch on Engineering District 5 here, I'm not moving on without leaving the place in real good hands. There's a group that's worked with me for years that's taking charge right now. Chris Kufro headed up our design unit for a number of years and acted in when I went down to the city of Philadelphia for a short stint, he took over for a while. He's an ace. So I'm not leaving the cupboard empty by any stretch of the imagination. And Scott Votero is here with me today. He's heading up our design unit, another one that's been in Harrisburg and Allentown region for years and knows the business like the back of his hand. Also want to thank my man Ron Young sitting there, who's the face of PennDOT. Probably a face that's better off on radio than TV, but I love Ron, so I can do that to him. But Ron's been here for ages, and he's the face of PennDOT and tells our story really well. But the rest of the group you have there, Mike Guidon's relatively new. He heads up our construction unit. And he's heading up a program worth $500 million right now out on the streets. And that doesn't happen without everybody that started talking before I got here, between Becky, Tom, and Owen. They talk about the LVPC and the LVTS. It is a big team. There's a lot of players at the table talking about priorities and projects. We're going to be talking real soon about $90 million a year is what the Lehigh Valley Transportation Study gets. And obviously we have projects in the pipeline that's going to be spending that money. But we also had to look, we're looking 4 years out, we're looking 12 years out, we're looking 25 years out at all of our priorities, trying to catch problems before they get bigger, working with the cities and the counties along the way. So this group here, I have a lot of faith in them, and District 5 is in real good hands. Some of the projects recently, whether they're ongoing or recently completed, if you're real familiar with the western end of the county, which really exploded when we built 222, the bypass around Trexlertown, the real model for it, if you build it, they will come. As soon as that area opened up, that corridor exploded, warehouses galore, and with that comes the trucks. So Route 100 is saturated with trucks. And we built it out about as much as we can without taking a bunch of businesses out there. But what we wanted to reconstruct it because with all that truck traffic, it really takes on a lot of damage. Ideally, we would have built this in concrete. We planned it for a number of years and couldn't figure out a way to do it in concrete in a reasonable time frame and being able to maintain traffic. It just takes too long for concrete to set up typically to maneuver traffic around. So we did the next best thing. We reconstructed it and it's in blacktop, and there's a lot of advancements that's been made in blacktop over the years. And this is about the stiffest mix of blacktop we can put out there. And you know, we're a solid year into it with all these traffic movements, and you're not seeing much pushing out there. Summertime, you see that a little bit more with the heat, but I think we have a real good product out there, and we're ready for what's to come out in that area. I use the two Berks County projects just because they are so close, and we all know what we do here is an economic driver. We got to have our infrastructure in proper order in order for trucks, vehicles, buses, airplanes to come and go. And coming from the west and moving from New York out to the west into the Harrisburg region, those two projects, 78 reconstruction is something we're going to see in the near future in the Lehigh Valley. We have a project planned for 78 in western Lehigh County, very similar to where we're going to be building 3 lanes, upgrading interchanges. I'll touch on that one a little bit more in a few minutes. And I put the 78 Schuylkill Arch there just because it is kind of an engineering marvel, that project. You really can't see as you go over it. Just looks like your average project. But if you got down underneath, that's a historic concrete arch with many, many spans, and we're widening on each side, and we have to replicate that existing structure on the outside. So you can see the arches and the amount of work that it takes to replicate that and hold it in place for the better part of a month and a half while it cures. So there's a lot going on out there that you can't see. If you ever got a chance to loop down from under Cabela's and take a look, it's pretty neat what's going on down there. And then I always try to give our maintenance folks a shout out. They're doing a lot of good work. This one project here in Lehigh County, they reconstructed. We had one of the heavy storms came and blew out one of our pipes on a fairly busy road, and they reconstructed a pipe and a retaining wall 20 foot high, which is a pretty big deal for our maintenance folks. Here you go. Here's the hit list in the Lehigh Valley anyway. Center Valley Interchange, that project at 309 is due to be bid in 2026. Right now that's an at-grade intersection. We've had some really bad incidents and accidents in that area, and we're going to be building a grade separated interchange there. That's a few years out, 2026. Tillman Street Interchange at 309. Next year, early next year, we'll be putting that out. I think most of us are familiar with that. Very short on and off ramps, a lot of traffic, difficult place to get in and out. So we're going to upgrade that and widen things out and make it really safe. Cement Bridge just recently went to construction. We're building that off alignment south of the existing structure so we can continue to use the existing structure while the new one's built. But that's the connection there between Cement and Whitehall Township, or Northampton, Borough of Northampton and Whitehall. Hill to Hill Bridge, there's a depiction of what we have out there now. Obviously very narrow and very busy. Feeding into the south side of Bethlehem, Lehigh University, St. Luke's Hospital, very busy place down in the south side. And if you get hit that the wrong time of day, you're back out to 8th Street, 8th Avenue interchange. It is very busy, so we're going to be doing some widening to the bridge, and trying to work the traffic at the south end of it, because there's a lot going on there, a lot of movements, and we believe we have a real good plan there. And that's going to be a very expensive job. It's probably the better part of $80 million, but much needed and a huge project working with the city of Bethlehem. We're also going to work on the connector that heads over to Main Street also and do some rehabilitation work there. Big bridge up above Slatington is another expensive one, probably the better part of $20 million there. Slatington right up where it hits 145, 248. Another busy area that maybe some of you don't get there all that often, but it's a busy area. A lot of people up in that Carbon County, Palmerton area come down that way. And the other project, it's on here as a 78-100 interchange, but that's really a piece of the bigger project. It's a $280 million project that will start at that interchange and go all the way out to Berks County. So we have that interchange we're likely going to have to reconstruct. We're going to be likely putting an interchange at Adams Road. That's going to be a new interchange at Adams Road there before you head up the hill. The new Smithville interchange will get reconstructed, and likely we'll have 3 lanes in each direction. So that's a ways out. We are in design now. We're in preliminary engineering. We're probably looking at alternatives at this point, but that's a pretty big deal project for us in Western Lehigh. Some others I don't have on here though. We have, of course, you can't forget about 22 Fullerton Avenue. Becky had Riverside Drive. Fullerton Avenue interchange will be redone, finish that project, and it will ultimately allow Riverside Drive to outlet up on Wood Street above the interchange. So that's one we have in the works. Also on 22, the 191 interchange over there between Nazareth and the city of Bethlehem. We're going to be reconstructing that interchange. That's in early design at this point in time. Multiple projects on I-78. Anywhere from Route 33 to the Berks County line, there is a project either under construction or in design. So a lot going on 78. Just a few that we're working on or finishing. Obviously, the Tillman Street Bridge was a big deal, awesome project. Great party we had out there when we finally were able to open it up. We survived through COVID and kept moving that one along. Great project. I threw the roundabout in there in Berks. That obviously 222 is a huge feeder between Reading and the Lehigh Valley. And you'll see one of these just about finished pretty soon at Shantz Road, 863, 222. They've worked like a charm for us along that 222 corridor, moving traffic, a lot of truck traffic, and very, very safe. So you'll be seeing some more of those popping up throughout the Lehigh Valley. They've really proved their worth. Allentown Wire Mill, I know timing-wise, it hasn't been the best. We started with real good intentions. We have precast slabs out there, which was the first one in the valley. We were doing precast piers. We thought we were really going to make this thing move, and then COVID hit, and Verizon lines couldn't get moved, and utilities, unfortunately, constructability, utility-wise, when you get into an urban setting, can be difficult. And unfortunately, that's what we've run into here. But I think we're online for maybe the next month and a half. That project will be done, so that'll be nice to have that completed along the 145 corridor. So those are some of the big accomplishments in the valley or surrounding area. Things we've dealt with, like everybody: inflation, supply chain. I guess I can lead that a little bit into I-95. Wake up Sunday morning, wife tells me you may want to check the news. My eye hasn't stopped twitching since. It's been a whirlwind to get to the point where we are now. I think the governor and Secretary Carroll announced today our game plan. We're going to be backfilling that bridge area primarily to allow 6 lanes of traffic to run on 95 while we rebuild the bridge from the outside and work our way in. So obviously the Cotton Street ramp won't be utilized by northbound traffic, but I think that was the quickest way we could get I-95 traffic open. Supply chain, we couldn't get steel beams, even with everybody and their brother pushing to get steel beams. We couldn't get commitment for about a month, actually 2.5 months. It was 8 to 10 weeks is what we were looking at to get the steel beams, and that's just not acceptable to have I-95 shut for that period of time. So that announcement was made at 11 o'clock today, so we're full steam ahead down there in the city of Philadelphia. But that's the supply chain issue, inflation, everybody's dealt with it, workforce, trying to get people and being able to pay them the right amount of money has always been a concern for the Department of Transportation. There's a union contract coming up real soon, going to be finalized in the next couple months. My fingers are crossed that there's some significant increases for folks, because we struggle with equipment operators, which leads into winter services, and it's just a snowball effect. Pardon that horrible pun, but it becomes very difficult to take care of winter when you don't have people in your trucks. So hopefully we'll get a good contract. But we're always in competition with the warehousing industry here, because you see the signs all over the valley. $38 for a welder. Well, unfortunately, I can't start a welder at $38 an hour, and anybody working in the warehouse is making close to that. So that's a never-ending thing that we'll be dealing with. And we do have rapid turnover with our staff, and we're constantly training them, and then they move on. But you see the asphalt, diesel prices, steel prices. We have direct items in our contract where the price of asphalt and diesel goes up. That's done, we pay it. It's not a negotiation, there's a certain dollar figure. And some of these projects that go 3 years long, that can turn into $3-4 million extra payment right there. So I know I'm down to 3 minutes, I'll touch on EVs real quick. We are mandated with the infrastructure bill to start working through getting charging stations at a minimum every 50 miles along the interstate system. We put out our first round of requests. We had $56 million at our disposal, and we got $150 million worth of requests. That's statewide. So we are working through that at this point. Hopefully later this summer we'll be making announcements. But you can imagine it's the big players are all in the game, and they all have locations to put charging stations. So that's something that's always moving forward. Funding. Hopefully we'll get to a point where, well, in the next few weeks, it's all getting hammered out in the next couple weeks. But Governor Shapiro would love to get $100 million back into the motor license fund from the state police to PennDOT and work that way for the next 5 years. Because right now, we give the state police operational money of $500 million every year. The goal is to work that back to zero and fund them out of the general fund over 5 years, which turns into $1.5 billion over that time frame going into our projects. So that's short term. There's other things being kicked around right now, EV fees. There's a lot of legislation out there. I think something will happen. Can't tell you what that number is going to be yet, but it's all in the works. But thank you all. Appreciate your time, and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you very much, Mike. All right, to provide our closing remarks, please welcome the Vice Chair of the Chamber's Transportation Committee and Senior Consultant and Transportation Department Leader for Gordon Lawson, Heather Heater.
Thank you, everybody. On behalf of the Chamber Transportation Committee, the Chamber itself, thank you all for joining us today. Thank you to Mack Trucks for once again letting us host the summit here. This is always a great event and perfect for the Transportation Summit. And finally, I'd like to thank all of our presenters. That's what's really draws this crowd here, and we really appreciate all of your support in the summit. And lastly, I'd like to thank all of our sponsors for sponsoring this event and making it possible. Thank you everybody for joining us. And if anybody's interested in joining the Transportation Committee, you can see myself or Ralph or any of the Chamber members. Have a wonderful day, and